Good morning, everyone. This looks just like it does in church on Sunday mornings with the front row empty. So if you feel like moving up, please feel free. You'll be able to see these a little better. I'd like to introduce, my name is Jan Ross. My husband and I own the store since 17 years ago.
Oh,
So in March, that'll be 17 years. And I'd like to introduce Les Rhines.
good
He is
morning.
from the not Bluebirds. That's Pat Reddy. Um, Purple Martin Association,
Yes.
and he will be presenting all kinds of fun things for everybody today. So please save your questions for as late as we can, if you can. And then at the end, he will take questions. And I would love it if you would repeat the question
Oh,
because we might not be able to hear it on the
sure.
video.
Sure. I can.
And we are taping
Try to
this,
remember.
so eventually it will get up on our website, and you're welcome to just click on it and view it as much as you want to if you need a reminder here and there. But okay, thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Well, good morning. So you heard my friends. If I can do it again. Okay. This is what we listen for. This is we'll hear them typically before we see them. Okay. So a little cold for them this morning. They're not going to be back into our state till the end of March, beginning of April. But we're in preparation for that right now. So I represent the Wisconsin Purple Martin Association, and currently I serve as president of that group. And I'm here today to just talk to you a little bit about Purple Martins, and maybe you know a lot of stuff about them already, maybe not. But hopefully when this seminar is over, you'll know at least a little bit more about Purple Martins and what to look for. I've got a slideshow presentation that I'll go through. I've sequenced the slides. Is first of all, it'll be a little bit about the bird itself, its habitat, its environment, its migration route, and things like that. Then I kind of go through seasonally what to expect while the bird is visiting us in the spring and summer. And after that, then I transition into what we need to do to attract Purple Martins to our colonies, if we want to start a colony, or things that we have to do to retain our martins and maintain our colony. So this is just a chart that's put out by the Purple Martin Conservation Association. That's a group out in Pennsylvania, that kind of an umbrella of all of our little groups. It's the main educational wing for us. And it's a really nice chart because it shows different types of housing on there. It shows the migration up over on the upper left-hand corner. It shows an adult pair up in the upper right-hand corner. And it shows along the bottom, it shows first of all a nest, and you'll see other pictures of that later on, but then also nestlings as they progress. These birds, from when they hatch, we're talking about 28, they actually could fledge at 28 days. But they'll hang in the cavities anywhere between 28 and some 31 and even 32 days. They hang back. So, but they could even start fledging at 28 days. So this is a photo and from taken by our past president, Tom Rank, and it's just to indicate, it's a great shot, by the way, but also to indicate that everything is on the wing with these birds. They feed and they drink on the wing. They're aerial insectivores. This is a little bit about our group. Our charter, our mission is to restore and preserve the Purple Martin population throughout Wisconsin. And that's my information on the bottom. I've included at every one of the chairs a business card and a bunch of other information about our organization that you can reach us. This is our board of directors that are currently serving. Welcome. The types of services that our group tries to provide besides education, but public meetings, and we hold Zoom meetings because of where everyone is located. We have an annual Martin Fest. I've included a flyer for you on your chair about that. This year it's going to be in June I'll speak more about that later on. We have a statewide mentor program. So if you're interested in starting a colony somewhere, contact one of us and we can hopefully hook you up with someone who is able to help you. We try to do free site evaluations, either boots on the ground type of thing, or we many times can accomplish it via technology, Google Earth, Google Maps, things like that. We can take a look at your site and let you know if it's suitable for purple martins, things like that. We have managed public colonies. I'll have a slide up about that later on, where they're located, and you can get involved with those. We have a website, Facebook. We also provide a quarterly newsletter. Our newsletters go out on quarters, but we only send them out to paid memberships for the current year. So for 2024, example, they're only going to go out to members that are paid. Previous newsletters for 2023 are available to view out on the website. This is a pair of adult purple martins. The acronym we use is ASY. So I'll say that a few times. You'll probably hear that. ASY stands for after second year. So it's considered that after a bird is 2 years of age, they are an adult. So hence after second year, ASY. The species itself, average length 7.5 inches. Progeny subitus. They're largest member of the swallow family, and average weight about 56 grams, wingspan 15 to 16 inches. The males obviously are, as ASYs, they're that dark black, blue, purple plumage that they have. Subadult males, I'll show a picture of that in a little bit. They will have some dark feathers, but typically some blotching. But so the all black, that's the adult male. So here again we have an adult male after second year, looking for, from the back and also from the front. There we have an adult female. So she has a light colored chest, more of the flecking on her, but the dark purple blue hues on her back. The second year birds, these birds that were hatched and fledged the previous year, we call them SYs. So they are actually in their second year. And this happens to be a male. He's getting his coloring in on his wings and on his back, his head. But on breast, you can see there's a lot of blotching going on. White breast with a lot of blotching of black, and also down near the tail coverts and things like that. This one has a relatively dark head already, but I've seen them many times where the blotching will also be occurring on the head as well. These birds will start a colony. These are the birds you're looking for if you're going to be starting a new colony. These second year or SY birds. The SY female, she again looks very much like the ASY female, but the tail feathers down near, or covert feathers down near the tail, they're pretty white. That flecking doesn't continue all the way down. But that's what a second year bird looks like. Their breeding range is North America. Up in the upper left you can see there's some dates up there with some lines. That indicates when these birds typically migrate back into North America, when we can expect to see them. So you look at the April 1st line, that's about where we are. Just in that southern portion of Wisconsin, that's typically when the birds will start to return. The ASYs, the after second year, the adults, that's when they'll start to come back in. But you can see they migrate all the way down into South America, down into Brazil. Migration range is pretty far. I mean, some of these birds, the birds say all the way up into Canada, all the way down, you're looking at a 5,000-mile trek for those birds. So now a little bit more about the birds. This goes back all the way to 1966. A slide coming from the Breeding Bird Survey, total purple martin numbers from 66 through 2022. And you can see back in 66, plentiful, lots of birds. But now as the years progress, you can see that downward cycle, but it built up to 1971 where we had 591 at a high, but then it started to slowly work its way down and to in the 2000s where we've had some pretty rough years. We're building back up again. Unfortunately, there was no information that 2020, that was a COVID year, so a lot of data was not collected during that time. But our numbers, I should say, the purple martins are a species of special concern. They're not endangered, but they're a special concern, and so we are maintaining our populations in the state, but we're just not able to really grow as rapidly as we would like. And there's various reasons for that, and I'll talk about that as we go on. Density in the state of Wisconsin, I've got a couple slides to indicate that. Back to 95 and 2000, when some of these population densities were determined, you can see there were colonies spread throughout the state, or known purple martin colonies. Some reporting, some not, okay? Because a lot of folks had purple martins, but they didn't necessarily report them to any organization. But you can take a look at that when all those little purple dots on there represents a known colony at that time. Take a look over at the right-hand side to 2015, and you can see there are some gaps. Up in the northern Wisconsin, there aren't as many purple dots anymore, even through central Wisconsin. But more along the east side of Wisconsin, along the lake shore, not as many, but still clusters. And we're starting to see that over on the western side of the state as well. We look at what's going on now, and again, comparison from 95, 2000, and 2015 and 2019, you can see still not much in the north woods, okay, for birds, but over on the western side, northwestern, and along the lakeshore, bigger clusters. You can see where the birds are clustering. That's because that's where there's housing. This is a species that does not nest in cavities any longer of trees. They did once upon a time, but this is a species that is dependent upon us for their housing that they use for their nesting. Why? Because those cavities are gone. That environment is gone. It used to be old oak savannas, and that's just gone. So if we wouldn't put up housing, and that's really the statement to get out of this, if we would not put up housing, the population would crash. There would probably be some birds that would adapt, but who knows how many that would be. But the population would seriously crash. So who started it all? Native Americans. They found that they were growing gourds and using gourds within their camps for a variety of purposes. They had them hanging out on trees for drying and things like that, and pretty soon purple martins were investigating and using them for nests. So they looked at that and said, hey, that's pretty cool. So they started hanging them on purpose, and the birds would use them. So they would use them in their villages, and it became a great relationship between the birds and the Native Americans. The birds would warn them if there was an intruder, if something happened, because the birds would go up in a ruckus, and so it was an alarm kind of a signal. So that's really where this began. Native settlers saw that and thought, we would like to have purple martins in our yard too. So on the right-hand side of that house, you can see the purple martin house. One thing I want to point out to you in both of these slides, look at the proximity of the colony to human dwellings. How close it is. It's not out in a field somewhere. That's one of the worst things you can do. Buy a big T14 house or buy a set of gourds and put it out in your field 200 feet away from your house. It's away from all tall trees, which is good, and I'll talk about that, but the birds will ignore it. They like us. They've come to rely on us for their safety, and they just like us. They're people birds. So you need to be close to human housing. Okay, back to this one. So a little transition time now. So a little bit about the birds. What do martins eat? Well, you can't feed them seed. They're not going to do that. They're aerial insectivores. So everything is on the wing, just as that previous slide was, where that skimming martin over a pond. Why were they over a pond? Not only to drink, but that's a source of insects. That's bugs, large insects. Dragonflies, moths, monarchs. And unfortunately, a martin doesn't discern between an insect. It's food, okay? But they eat large insects. And mosquitoes, there was a J.L. Wade in Griggsville, Illinois, had a company down there that built purple martin houses, the aluminum ones, the trio houses, and had a campaign on how each purple martin eats up to 2,000 mosquitoes a day. Well, they will eat mosquitoes, but it's not a large portion of their diet, much larger insects. Other species will eat the mosquitoes, but purple martins do tend to keep bug populations down in your area because they're hungry. But they eat a wide variety of flying insects. They eat food on the fly. Just another photo of it, of some of the types of morsels that these birds eat. In April, so now we're starting to look at the calendar year. What can we expect in April? In our state, early March, March 31st and things like that. So end of March to beginning of April is when the first, we many times refer to them as scouts. That's when the first arrivals will start to migrate back. And they're not going to come back in flocks. They're typically ones and twos. They're loners. They're individuals as they're coming back. All throughout their migration phase. They ride or fly back in advance of the food. It's typically thought that these birds migrate north as ground temperatures warm and insects become available. That they tend to stay in one area south of here until it warms a little further north, and then they advance north. So that's why the dates. So as warming temperatures warm the country northward, the birds advance. Sometimes that doesn't work out, many times, and we have to do a little feeding for the birds, and I'll talk about that as well. But so the scouts are the oldest ones, and they're really coming back because they're looking for the prime sites that they can claim or attempt to claim from others. It's always, you want to be the first one there, to get the right stuff, to get the good stuff. And that's what these birds are doing as well. PMCA, Purple Martin Conservation Association, the Scouting Report, they've got a great website out there. They have one of the educational tools. They have a Scout Arrival Survey. Last ASY Scout arrived in our state on March 30th of 2022. That was, I think that one is around the Montello area. I know it was last year on the 27th of March, 2023. It was Harrisville. That there were actually two on that same day. Jim Thays was the first one that reported to the PMCA. And he is located around Harrisville in the greater Montello area. This year, who knows? I mean, we've had a weird winter, okay? We're having a little winter today, okay? Yeah, I saw 9 on my car, 9 degrees as it was driving over, and 16 when I arrived. But I mean, watching the weatherman last night and looking at the calendar so far, it's like, this is February, you know? So I don't know what to expect with these birds, okay, and how things are going to happen because we don't have the snow on the ground that's keeping the ground temperatures cold. So does that mean things are going to wake up a little early? Are we going to be looking at an earlier date than the 27th? We'll see. We have to be ready. So I mentioned what can happen sometimes. We can have winter when we don't want it. Okay, so that's a picture of my colony, and that was in 2022. And sure enough, we had winter. So I was anticipating birds returning, and we're dealing with winter. So it happens. We sometimes, and the birds start to think things like this. They're ready to go back. And so we start looking at temperature trends and things like that. This was from a couple of years ago. But, you know, we get these things in April, just when we don't want that. And we get, you know, the prolonged cold where it dips all the way down into the southern states and things like that. Well, that's bad news for purple martins because there aren't any insects. So we do something we call supplemental feeding. And it's something that we do. We try to mimic what's natural for the birds. We know that during these times when there's snow and we've got maybe, you know, 5, 6, or 7 birds that are a colony already and they can't find food, it's been a day, and they're perched on their rods, their wings are drooping. So we supplemental feed. We get crickets. There's a couple different food sources, but we buy banded crickets, 1-inch banded crickets from various suppliers online or in stores, things like that. And we take the live crickets. I put them in my freezer for about 24 hours so that they're not lively anymore. Then I take out as many as I need. I'll put them in a little dish of warm water that they moisten, drain off the water, pull one out at a time, and then I'll take, I don't want to advertise any particular fast food restaurant or anything like that, but pretty much people know where this one is from, okay? And I'll put that cricket inside there, and if the birds are where this screen is right here, then what I'll do is I'll try to direct that cricket high up into the air, above the house, above the bird, that they can see it going up, and their eyes are located on the top of their head. They'll see it, and they'll off the house, and they'll go for it. So we're supplemental feeding with a source that they're not accustomed to. They're not going to find crickets on their own, but we're using the cricket because it's a very good protein source. Now, another thing that we can do is eggs. Oh, we use scrambled eggs, and you can see that bird on the right, excuse me, that bird on the right there has a piece of scrambled egg in its beak. So we found that eggs are a very good source of protein, but the birds don't take them as easily. So what we'll do is we'll take another protein source, and this is a bluebird food now, mealworms, okay? And we'll take these mealworms, and first of all, we'll crack an egg, mix it up really good, and then we'll take about a teaspoon of ground up mealworms, and we'll add that to the egg. Make up the scrambled eggs, go in there and break it all up into little pieces, irregular shapes, and then our same old spoon, and we'll flip those egg pieces. Thank you. Mealworms, bluebird food, martin food. So we'll take those scrambled eggs and we'll flip them up, and those birds will come off, they'll fly off, and they'll accept them in the air. Now, after you have birds that accept it, then you can probably even offer mealworms, crickets, and scrambled eggs on a tray setup like that. And the birds will land on that and then clean that up. But caution, as with any food source like that, anything that's not consumed right away or within an hour, you should take away. And then clean your feeders again with a little alcohol wipe or something like that, because you don't want to spread bacteria to these birds. But we supplemental feed, and we do that even by flipping them up onto a rooftop. I see this many times, and I have a deck off of my house, and I can have access to the rooftop. And what I'll do is I take eggshells, because martins like eggshells and other species do as well. But I save my eggshells, I rinse them out, and then I either put them in the oven at about 200 or so for about half hour, or I put them in the microwave and nuke them for a little bit so that they're nice and dry. And I'll crunch them up and I'll throw them on my rooftop. And the martins will sometimes come and get them, but the barn swallows, it draws the barn swallows onto my rooftop at night. So it's kind of fun to do that. So we got past April, we supplemental fed, the birds are finding food on their own, the world is good. It's courtship time. So the birds are still coming up, although that's waning a little bit. But these birds now are pairing up. They're finding cavities, they're selecting cavities, and they're pairing up. Purple martins do not mate for life, so as other species do. But May is typically when this happens. And also, this is when nest building occurs. So a landlord, what they're watching for is they're watching to see if the birds are actually pairing up in which either compartment on the house they're occupying or which gourd on the rack they're occupying. But they're also looking to see what's going on. When they start to see what's happening in the upper left-hand corner, these birds are bringing in green leaves. Now we know that egg laying is not far away. It's believed that the birds bring in the green leaves, and they're not really sure why, but they have a few different theories. One is to soften the nest. One is to cool the nest. One is to keep some of the lice and other bacteria out of the nest. But when you start to see them bring in green leaves, then you know egg laying is not far behind. The females are the ones that will sit on the eggs. The males do not, because females have the brood patch. So all the incubation is done by the female. So I've seen them around my house already fly into trees, and they'll be up in the tops and they'll be tugging and tugging and tugging, trying to get leaves out. And sometimes they'll small leaves from like ash, well, not ash, but willow. But I've seen them in ash trees as well, and also in some of the maples. Sometimes they can get a whole leaf, and sometimes they'll just tear off a little portion, and they'll be happy. But that's what they're looking for, the green leaves. What are we doing there this time while they're busy building nests, laying eggs, and things like that? Our job as a landlord is we're always watching. Daily walk-unders. My colony, I walk under every day. Couple things, I whistle, I talk to the martins, they know me. So some will dive bomb me at that point, but they'll get used to me, and that's really what you want. You want them to get used to your presence. And so every between 5 and 7 days, I will lower all of the racks. Lower the gourd rack, I'll lower the houses, and I'll open compartments. I'm snooping. Okay, I'm invading their privacy. But I'm looking to see what's going on. Sometimes hornets and wasps will build into some of these, so I want to make sure that that doesn't occur. Sometimes I might have an invasive species, a sparrow or a starling, that is attempting to nest, so I want to pull that nest out. And sometimes I just want to see what's going on, if there's any activity, if birds have brought any nesting material in, if there are any nests that have green leaves, and I'll take records. So I'll start by recording what number gourd it was. So it was a number 3 Troyer vertical gourd, and in number 3 Troyer vertical, I saw green leaves. So I'll know at what stage of the whole cycle things are. So I like to know, as a landlord, I like to know when the first egg was laid, when the last egg was laid. Because then I can predict when hatching is going to occur, because I know that's 16, 17 days. And then I can also predict when fledging is going to occur. And I can have that on my record, so that as I do my nest checks, I'll know where each compartment is in the cycle. Because in June and July, this is what we're seeing. We're seeing these little ones. And that's a real healthy nest over on the right. An ASY pair, typically 5 eggs. 5, 6, some folks have 7, some 8. The birds can't handle that many, and sometimes what will happen is they'll roll eggs out to the front, or you'll see them on the ground. And that might have been an egg that was not fertile, something like that. But in those instances, the birds tend to take care of themselves. But subadult pairs, those birds that were hatched and fledged the previous year, usually 4, sometimes 5 eggs in their clutches. So we're doing these nest checks every 5 to 7 days, and we're dropping the house, we're pulling out the nest tray, just like this. We're pulling out the nest tray, and we're inspecting, and we're looking to see what's going on. These birds right here are rather young yet, so the nest material I would expect would be very dry. And the nest material, dry pine needles that we use. We pre-nest all of our nests for them. And so if it's still pretty dry, that's good. We just put it back in, and we check all the other ones, and we raise the house back up. And we go on. If the nest is pretty soiled, if the nests are at maybe 12 days, the chicks are 12 or 13 days old, then we'll probably do a nest change. And the birds tolerate this. So what we do is we lower the house, pull out the nest tray, put the birds in a pail with some bedding on the bottom, put a cover over it, and we take the old soiled nest material, dump that into a pail, replace it with new dry material, create a little bowl in there, put the chicks back in there, back into the compartment they go. We'll usually opt for 2 nest changes a season, one around 12 days or so, and then the other one about 21 or 22. I don't like to go much past 23, because at 28, they could fledge already. And these birds, these chicks are pretty active already. We supply calcium and grit for them as well. I talked about the eggshells up on my roof. We do that. These birds need a good source of calcium. So I provide that on my feeders as well for the martins. So we've had a successful brood. They fledged after 28 to 31 days. Now what happens? That's the sad time for us, because the colony was just active, from say, first, second week of April, all through May, all through June, a lot of activity, into July. At mid part of July, then pretty soon, birds are starting to fledge, and they're flying off. Parents are taking them off to a place to teach them how to feed for themselves. And they come back to the colony only at night. So that's the high point. Always around 7 or 8 o'clock at night when these birds return, and you've got, the sky is not dark with them, but you have a lot of bird activity around the colony at night. But these birds start to leave us. They begin to go off to what we call roosts, communal roosts with other species. One of the roosts in this area is the Lake Poygan area. So they begin to move over to these roosts and join other birds, and they actively feed over there. They're building up their fat resources to make the migration back to Brazil. So that's what's happening there. And there's various roosts around the country, and also in South America. One that probably received a lot of attention is the one in Nashville a few years ago, where purple martins were starting to come in around the Symphony Center and things like that, and roosting in these trees at night. And of course, a lot of the patrons didn't think that was a really cool thing. So they took some of the trees down and provided a place for the birds to roost elsewhere. And it was successful. But it was neat, because when you're seeing, massive birds like that, it's a unique situation. They can sometimes show up like that in the morning when these birds are starting to leave the roost. It's on Doppler radar, how they'll just explode. You think it's a weather event, but it's birds leaving a roost. So, we're back to this again. So now we're at a transition point. Okay, we've had the birds. That's really the life cycle of the birds in Wisconsin, what happens with them. If you were interested in becoming a purple martin landlord, and you wanted to do this at your home or someplace that you knew has a great location to host purple martins, then we need to talk about attraction methods, attraction techniques. Okay, so when you're trying to attract purple martins, what we do is we try to create an illusion that we have an active colony, even though we don't, but we're trying to create that illusion. So the question sometimes is how do we do that? And I said earlier that the birds that will start your colony are not the adult birds, although sometimes adult birds do start colonies, but they're for other reasons. And that's because maybe an established colony, something happened. Maybe the housing is no longer available. Maybe it fell into disrepair. Maybe some of the housing was taken down, so there weren't as many compartments that were offered, and the adult birds had to disperse. So, but those SYs are the ones that will start our colony. So the thing about this is the arrival times for SYs in Wisconsin are typically 6 weeks after the ASYs. So if we said, you left today and say, I want to put up a purple martin colony, you've got time. You have more time than if you were trying to attract an ASY pair, because those are the ones that you're trying to get to your site, the SYs. The SYs. So, and they come 6 weeks after. So this is that subadult female again, what she looks like. So looking at it from a calendar perspective, the subadult arrival dates in Wisconsin, this goes back to PC or PMCA data from 2008. That number May 1st was pretty much realistic. But end of April to beginning of May. I always like to say SY start to arrive in our state during the first full week of May. And they will continue to come pretty much all the way through the end of June. So you have 2 months where they're going to migrate up. Last year, the SY was reported on May 4th. So we have a little bit more time to put up our housing for them. And, oh, by the way, if you are going to do something like this, then you really don't want to put up that housing until these birds start to arrive. Because if you put it up earlier than that, chances are it's going to be taken over by sparrows or starlings and things like that. So you want to keep it down so you eliminate that competition. So they'll come all the way up to the end of May. Some people say 4th of July. Late arriving SY have a hard time competing with adults, with the adult ASY males for nesting sites. Females, as they come up, they are in they're in a great need because there are still some ASY males that haven't paired up. So as these younger SY females come up, they're claimed by the ASY males. So sometimes you have the younger birds that are not able to nest as well. So the questions you ask yourself before you put up housing: do you live in the purple martin's range? Okay, you do. Do you have a good site location with open flyways? I'll talk about that. That's something to think about. Are you willing to manage the housing? That's an important question to answer, because it was believed and accepted practice many, many years ago that you put the house up at the beginning of the year and got her done, and you left it alone for the whole season, or even through the winter, and didn't think about it till the next spring before you cleaned out the holes before the martins arrived. That's not the case anymore. We want to make sure that the housing is taken down at the end of the season and that we manage it, that we can raise it and lower it. So, location. A couple different examples the PMCA uses. Choose a wide open location away from trees, 40 feet minimum from trees. And look at the distance from the house, 30 feet minimum, to as much as 120 feet maximum. Those earlier slides I pointed out said, notice how close those colonies are to the dwellings, human dwellings. They can be close, 30 feet. If, water, that's always great, because that's open all the way around. You want to try to have a situation where birds can come in and land from at least 3 different directions. That's preferred. If you only have 2, then you only have 2. It's still worth a try. But if you have 3, all the better. So an open flyway is what we always talk about. At least 40, 50 feet away from trees. You don't want to do something like this. This is a bygone era where the pole is, you see up on the upper right there, where it's erected, that hinge at the bottom, and that's it. We can't lower that every 5 to 7 days to check the house, to check what's going on in the compartments. So we want to have something we can raise and lower. More examples. Yeah. This one on the right, there were many houses like that. I attended one back in 2001 that in Finger, Tennessee, at Victor Stoll's farm. He was hosting the National Purple Martin Festivals for the PMCA, and he had a couple houses like that. But it's, he knew how many birds he had, but there was no way for him to be able to really effectively manage them. His son, Victor, unfortunately, has passed, but his son, Peter, has taken over the colony and changed everything now to be able to raise and lower, that he can manage the houses. So, yep, that one. So, again, one on the left, a series of houses, and gets a lot of birds, but there's no way that we can effectively manage those houses at all. So we're looking for things like this, that we can lower the house using a winch and a cable system, whether it be a wood house or a gourd rack, but that way we can actually get in there and we can look at every individual compartment. So just like they're on the right hand side, that's a gourd, and the gourds have an access panel on them that we can unscrew that lid and get in there, and we can put bedding material in there. We can look and see how the family of martins are, and so they're quite effective. Man-made gourds or gourds that you grow, natural gourds as well. We want to make sure that they have starling-resistant entrances. So that's something as well. So wood house types, if you Google any one of these, the North Star, I don't have an example of that one here with me, but that's a real popular house designed by Bob Buskus up in Canada. The T14, which is, that is a T14, the one on the left, designed by Andrew and Adam Troyer over in Pennsylvania. It's 4 sections. That section right there on my table is 1/4 of that, one side of it. So it's a 4-sided house. They're large. They're these big condos that people see. Very nice house, but quite large, quite heavy. Gourds are a nice alternative with a gourd rack because they're lighter, much easier to maintain. There's metal housing. There's a variety of housing, and I've given you a Troyer catalog that you have, and that has examples of the housing types, gourds as well as wood houses in there, and that you can see some difference one. There's one called a chirpy nest that's on there, and that's what this one is all about right here. Something new that a fella from West Virginia designed, and it hangs on the gourd rack just like this. So the bird enters in from the porch. This is what we call a starling resistant entrance, this ob-round configuration. Instead of a round hole, it prevents starlings from entering, but martins can still get in. It has a deep cavity, and the birds are way in the back here on this one. So some of the things we look for in housing, which we'll talk about, is we want to have something that offers large cavities. Gourds are a great choice for this because they're big. They have starling resistant entrances. For many people getting into martins, gourds are the thing because it's not as expensive as a big wood house and they're easy to maintain. So that's a Troyer vertical gourd, and that's what this one is right here. So it's a very large gourd, one family of martins in here easily. It has what they call a tunnel that's on it, has a starling resistant entrance, and it has the access to it for us to clean out and actually do our snooping and things like that. Okay, there's the chirpy nest, and good airflow on that one. I've got chirpy nests in my colony, and after 3 years, the birds are just starting to use them, and I really like them as a landlord because it's easy to maintain because it has a pull-out nest tray that, you know, I can pull it out, I can view the birds and things like that very easily, and then I can put it back in. And if I have to do a nest change, that's easier than putting my hand into this small round hole on the side and pulling all that nasty nest stuff out of there. Different types of houses. If you're starting a colony, take a look around your area and see what other landlords are using for their housing types. Base your choice on that because the birds in your area are familiar with that. T14 on the left and also on the right. Deep compartments, that's the key. 7 inches by 7 inches by 12, or some combination of that. 11 or 12 inches deep, 6 or 7 inches wide, 6 or 7 inches tall. But deep compartments, the old standard, the birds were confined into 6 inches by 6 inches by 6 inch. If you go to Fleet Farm today, I go to my Plymouth Fleet Farm, and there are houses there. And sure enough, they're very nice. They're cedar houses. They have big round holes on them, which is bad. But the compartments, 6 by 6 by 6. It's a standard that just isn't actual anywhere, factual. It's not good for the birds. This is a North Star house, so it's more of a square style house, but it still offers the deep compartments. Pull-out nest trays are very nice because it just makes our job as landlords so much easier. Also, different types of starling resistant entrances. You'll see one on the left that has like a half round shape called a crescent. The height of that opening is the thing that's important. Winches, every one of these systems are on a winch. So you could use a boat winch, you could use a brake winch. If I'm doing it, I'm recommending the brake winch. Because if I'm turning the crank, if my hand slips off that handle, no problem, the house stays where it is. If I'm on a boat winch and my hand slips off, it's coming down. So I don't want that. So one of the important things is that you want to have a safety pin on these. So up 6 feet or so above, you want to have a hole drilled through the pole and a pin installed so that if the winch does malfunction, if the cable breaks and the house is coming down, it will stop on that pin and not crush you. Because a house of a T14 made out of cedar, as an example, is probably about 90 pounds. Starling resistant entrances, just some different styles. So as a landlord, you buy something or build something that has starling resistant entrances. Do not use a round hole. And as you can see, the main thing on it is that, I'm looking at my next slide, sorry. The specifications on that is that the height of the opening is 1 3/16. So it's quite small, quite narrow. And a 3-inch wide minimum. And as you can see, the bottom of the entrance is almost flush with the porch. Purple martins can get into those easily, but so purple martins can get into this quite easily, whereas starlings cannot. So here's my house, and that's I'm down by my martin colony. That's looking back at my house, and I'm greater than 30 feet away. I'm probably about 70. But it's all open. And that's on the east. That's about 50 feet. My south flyway, that goes on through the field. And onto my neighbors on the west. I've got to that tree over there, that's probably 80 or 90. So I've got an open flyway. And that's what you want. But you don't necessarily have it on all 4 sides, but if you have it on 2 or 3, again, that 40 foot, that's really what you're looking for. More open, the better. How do we attract them? As new landlords, we can use decoys. So we try to trick them. We've got a house up, and what are we going to do? Well, we're going to take a decoy. And what I do is I put clothespins on the decoys, or small little clamps. And I'll take 2 of them when I'm trying to start a colony, whether it's one that's purchased, this is made out of plastic, and this is one that I carved. So I'm not a wood carver, but it's pretty close. The birds don't know. But putting them on clothespins, what I can do is I can attach them to my gourds, my gourd rack. Okay, I can attach them to various places. I never want to put it in front of the entrance, but I attach it to a couple different places on the gourd rack or on the house. Every day, I lower it, I move them around. Again, I'm trying to trick these birds. As they're flying over, if they look down and they see these 2 birds sitting in the same place day after day after day, they're not going to be very intrigued by that. They're going to say, the jig is up. This isn't a viable setup. So we move the decoys around. Okay, I don't recommend putting them on the very top of the pole because we can't move them around. And if they fall or they turn, then certainly a martin, investigating martin, is going to look at that and say, what's going on here? Gymnastics? But what happened with this decoy? It was hit by a hawk. It was hit by a predator. That's another reason for having decoys. Let the decoys get the talons and not the birds. So I use 2 decoys per house. I move them around typically every day. I watch out for if there's any hawks or owls in the area. I never block the entrances with them. I attach them to the gourd, never to the top of the pole. I use clothespins or other clamps. You can get them at Fleet Farm, PMCA, variety of sources will have these things, or carve your own. Okay, dawn song, you heard that before. Okay, so I don't know if it'll play again here. Let's see if I can get it to go. So the playing of dawn song attracts birds. So what do? There's a couple different ways for us to play dawn song. It's available, it's a recording available on CD. And you can set an outdoor speaker out in your area, your yard, near your martin house, and play this. It's designed initially, it was designed to be played at dawn and for approximately 2 hours. What dawn song is, actually, it's the older martins that they found a site, they've made it up, they're content, all is right with the world, and they're up in their pre-dawn hours and they're singing. What they're really doing is these adult males are up there calling in SY females. More ladies come to this colony. That's what's happening. So the vocalizations are extremely important and they're powerful. If a bird hears that, they will come to investigate. So I play dawn song a little bit different. I play it on a laptop, and I recorded that CD onto a laptop. I use Windows Media Player and a series of scheduled tasks, and I have it set out, run out with a wire dug underground to an outdoor speaker at the base of my colony, and I play it starting at 11 o'clock at night. So when I'm trying to attract birds, and I recommend to people when they're trying to start a colony, start at 11 o'clock at night. Your neighbors are asleep. They're not going to hear it. Okay? Well, so 11 o'clock, and you play from 11 to 1, typically 2 hours. Then on my laptop, I'm off for 5 minutes, and then I start again. And I keep going on that same cycle till about 6 or 7 in the morning. I stop then. I don't go much past that because other birds, predators, are awake. And predators will also be drawn to that signal. So if you don't have a laptop in combination to do it that way, there's another device called a songbird magnet that has this vocalization pre-recorded into it. And it's available on Troyer. Let me just jump ahead here. That's an outdoor speaker. And I had that happen already on mine, where they landed right on it. But the songbird magnet is through Troyer, Amazon, a number of different places. I don't know if the store has anything like that. But these, 2 ways in which you can do it. There's one setting that there's a photoelectric cell on here that you just plug it in, hang it out there, and it will begin playing at dawn for 2 hours and then shut down for the day. There's another setting on here under continuous play, and I use that one. And I'll set it up to a 24-hour timer so that I can start it at 11 o'clock. So then I go 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock, and then I'm off for a half hour. Then at 1:30 to 3:30, I'm off for a half hour. And my 24-hour timer is half-hour increments. And this is only 2-hour loop on here. So quite effective. But that vocalization is really effective. And again, the CDs are available. And to play the dawn song, I've talked about that already on how to do that. The next thing, you're trying to attract martins, you have to make it comfortable for them. Well, not with a mattress, but with pine straw. Okay, so we use pine straw. I mentioned this earlier. Dried pine needles, white pine, the coarse. You can even get the real long ones. I'm not sure what pine that is, but they work as well. But they're pretty plentiful. I've got a neighbor that has a really nice big pine tree, and every spring I go out and I rake up a bunch and spread them out on the tarp, let the sun dry them really, really well, and then I bag them up. And I use these at my colony and at the public colonies. So you want to put a couple handfuls in each of the compartments. If you're using a T14 and you have nest trays, notice the nest tray on the left, brand new, nicely constructed. Notice the one on the bottom, all dark. Use mud. We take mud, mix up a little bit of mud with water, an old paintbrush, and just paint it up, muddy it up. It's not the smell, because the birds don't have an olfactory sense, okay? But it gives it this used look, like something's lived in it before. That's what you're trying to do. I mentioned you're trying to create an illusion, okay? So darken the inside with mud. I even go with my paintbrush and I'll go around the entrances, around on the front and on the inside. Make it muddy, dirty it up. Another way is you can use a propane torch to darken wood on the inside, and that works too. You can darken it. We use mirrors sometimes to attract the birds. If they hear the vocalization, they see the decoy, they're coming down to investigate, they're flying around, they're circling. If they see some activity, they've seen the decoys, but they're stationary. But if they see some activity, if they fly past a house and it has a mirror on it, then they'll see a reflection. They think it's an active bird. It's one of them. Now, they're a little more, their fears are lowered, and they'll be more receptive to land. And that's really what you're trying to do. So you can put it on the outside of a house, never plug an entrance. You can also place mirrors on the inside, in the back. If a bird lands on it and looks into the compartment and sees its reflection, it thinks it's looking at another bird. That compartment's claimed. I'll look elsewhere. So mirrors are quite effective. They don't have to be large. Small little mirrors, 2x3, 2x2, circular mirrors, attached with duct tape or whatever to the outside or to the inside. Available just about everywhere. Okay, we want to protect our housing that we put up from predators. So we use a baffle on the bottom to keep squirrels out of it, keep raccoons out of it, keep snakes out of it. So a baffle is really something to consider as well, to keep those critters off. Larger colonies, people just starting out don't have to necessarily worry about this, but a larger established colonies, owls are a real concern. So those folks have to take some steps to keep the owls away from their housing. So owl guards, and there's all kinds of creative ways of doing that. On the upper right-hand corner, there's some vertical bars in front on that T14 to keep the owl away. The bottom right, a cage around the house. The martins figure it out. On the lower left, on gourds, there's some bars that extend out over in front. This is another method right here. This is a form of owl guard that I've attached to this gourd right here. And it's just, the owl will still land, but it'll prevent that owl from going any closer. So they'll land, and they'll still try to put their leg and their talon in there, but they can only reach so far. The birds are still in the back here, and they're protected. So that happens in large colonies that we have to worry about that. And again, more types of owl guards. Sometimes owls can even figure it out. So here's one that has a cage, and the owl has figured out that they can't land from the top, but if they come down and up, okay, these you don't have to worry about too much. Red tails, just a landing spot right here. So if I saw that, I'd go out and I'd shoo it away. I'd probably take a picture first, but I'd shoo it away. But these are the ones we have to worry about. Because we feed at my house, we have bird feeders. So in another location, and these guys are just drawn into that activity. And they're drawn into activity, purple martin activity as well, around the house. That's one of the reasons I don't play dawn song during the day, because I don't want them to hear that. We have competition that we have to deal with, just as bluebirders do. So we try to control the non-native nest site competition, the house sparrow, as well as the European starling. So the European starling, because we're using starling-resistant entrances, those birds will attempt to land on the housing and be a nuisance during the cycle that they're looking for nest cavities early on in the spring. But once they're thwarted, once they can't, they move on and find other sites. Sparrows, on the other hand, they don't give up. So we have to employ all kinds of different techniques, nest traps and other trapping methods to eliminate sparrows, besides tearing them out, besides tearing out their nest as they start to build. So there's a host of different types of traps to use, some that go into the house, some that are on the ground, a variety, some that are just traps for sparrows and starlings. That's the one on the left. That is not a birdhouse, that is actually a trap. It's a repeating trap that the birds, that these sparrows and starlings will go to. It's usually placed in amongst trees in a location where purple martins are not going to go, yet starlings and sparrows will frequent. So we have to deal with them. And there's other types of traps specific for this device right here, which is called a tunnel. So there's a trap that is specific just for this, for trapping sparrows. So we can incorporate that. Imposters that you'll see around your colony, barn swallows, tree swallows, and we manage them. We manage tree swallows around our colony as well as bluebirds. I always make sure that I put out a gourd 30 feet away from my martin colony every spring when the tree swallows will start to arrive. And then I entice the tree swallows to claim that gourd. So I don't have it with me, but I have a piece of plastic, a blue piece of plastic from like a butter container. It's about 2 inches wide, 4 inches long, and it's on a string, and it's suspended above the gourd. I have a horizontal gourd that I use for the bluebirds, and I suspend that above it, and it's flashing like this in the wind. And that blue and white color, these birds are attracted to that, and they come to investigate it. I also, inside the bedding material, I place feathers. So, and I place feathers on the yard. And because tree swallows love feathers for their nests, so I entice them that way. So we don't want bluebirds to build in our martin housing. We don't want finches to build in there, wrens, tree swallows, or anything like that. So we always provide housing for each of those species and try to get them to go to those places so that they don't bother our martins. Our goal is to have lots of martins. We always want to fledge healthy young. 50% rate is great. Eggs to fledge. And in good years, 70 to 80. I think I was at, last year, I think I was at that 70 or 69% with mine. Because it was a funny year. We had some eggs that were not fertile, and just what it is. Different types of eggs by comparison of the tree swallow, starling eggs by comparison. But this slide right here, when we look at different types of nests. So house sparrow, you can always tell it's a woven thing. These birds, they begin to weave this nest. And take my picture.
Take your picture.
Yeah, so they weave the nest, and you can always tell because when you open up the door, it'll just be filled with material, and there'll be a small little hole that will be visible, a tunnel, and that the birds will travel to the back of the nest. I mentioned tree swallows like feathers. Take a look at that one right there. You open up the cavity for the tree swallows, and there's just a bunch of feathers in it. They really like that. So as opposed to a purple martin nest, where the nesting material that we start with, and then also we have the green leaves in there that they're placed. Okay, we have purple martin colonies, public colonies that we foster, and there's a couple in the Madison area. I have to find them here. Let's see, where? McFarland, Lewis Park, 512 Highland Drive, and then up a ways there's another one. I thought McFarland, Dane County, Fish Camp Road is another one.
Do you know of the one that is at the intersection of Highway M and Fish Hatchery Road going south? Is an old barn that is now converted into a wedding.
Okay.
There is a little pond, and there's a Martin house that we founded a couple of years ago, and there's a very active pond there.
I personally am not aware
I
of
can give you
that
more
one.
information on
I would appreciate that. I'll pass that on to our biologist, Dick Nicolai, because that might be a colony that is not presently recorded. And whether it's a private colony or does it fall into the category of a public?
It's a public venue. I mean, it's a private
That'd be great.
owned but public venue. And
Okay.
they, as far as I understand, 2 years ago they set it up, and they got away.
Oh.
And so
Yeah.
it's very young.
I want to mention that one to Dick because that's probably not known to us. That's good. That's good. But we've got them, and if you know of one and you can't have martins at your own place, maybe your yard isn't conducive to that, you don't have the open flyway or whatever, and you're not sure it's something you want at this point, but you want some experience, volunteer. Go volunteer at one of these public colonies. Because, like I said, 5 to 7 days, the house should be lowered. You need to start taking records. You start monitoring what's going on with the birds. There was a question over here first. Oh. Okay. I am going to ask that before you leave, if you would share that with me. I'll right in here.
It's about time for questions. If anybody has
Okay.
questions. How much longer do you have to go? It looks like that's the end.
It's pretty much the end. We have a Martin Fest every year, and I've given you a flyer. So in June.
This gal has a
Yep.
question right there.
Yep. It's not in the material I've given you, but if you go to our website, it's there. It should be there. And if you cannot find it, I've given you my card. Reach out to me, and I'll get it to you.
Males come first, right? And then do both male and female hatchling?
Oh, yes. Yes. Yeah. Most of the time, people see males arrive first, like in early or late March, early April, but females are right along as well. There are some females that are coming north at that same time. Mm-hmm. Yes.
What constitutes a colony?
A colony? One pair. Mm-hmm.
All right. And then do they normally come back to the same if the housing is back every year?
ASYs typically will come back to that same place every year. Year after, they have great site fidelity that way. You know, unless something happens to them, which is what I've had. That migration, that 4,000 to 5,000 mile migration, is kind of hard on birds. So, but usually they come back. The SYs, let's say you had a hatch of 5 last season. Not all of them are going to make it. There's going to be some lost during the migration. So, 60% of those birds are going to be able to return, but maybe only one of those birds will come back to their natal colony. The other ones will strike out on their own to start new ones.
This is an incredible amount of work. And what I'd like to know is how long has the colony been active with Can you repeat that question?
How long has the
Colony been-
colony been going?
The whole activity.
Oh, of our group, or of purple
Anybody
martining?
who does the colony, because what you told
Oh.
us about today, I'm just taken back by it.
Oh.
It's an incredible amount.
How long have we been active with purple martins? Probably dating back to about the 70s, when we really started to get active. We had purple martins years and years and years and years, okay, but we never really actively managed them until about the late 70s, when we started to see their decline. Yep.
Why do you play the song at night if it attracts predators?
The only predator that's going to be attractive is an owl.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But an owl is going to be more attracted not to that call, but an owl is more attracted to the young in the nest. They'll hear those little peeps, okay?
But are the Martians going to hear the call at night?
Yes,
Are they flying around at night?
they're migrating from Brazil. They're riding these wind currents
So you're talking about during migration?
during
not
migration.
during the summer.
Right. The call is really only used for migration. Mm-hmm. Good answer. Good question. Yes. JL Wade, yes. The company that did the aluminum housing, yes. They're out of business. Yeah, they went out of, the JL Wade company went out of business many years ago. Parts are still available if you have some of that housing. It's the EVA Corporation. Google that and you'll be able to find that. But their colonies are being revived down there by, there's a Facebook page called the Griggsville Boys. And they are big into purple martins, trying to restore the colonies around Griggsville. Purple martin capital of the world. Acclaimed, or so they say.
We're at a long time
Okay.
after an hour, so
Thank you.
thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. It's very